What's going on, everybody? Happy Victory Monday. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPaul11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We are finally talking about a win. Obviously, a lot to kind of get into here. This will be about a 20-minute, or so pod. Midweek, I'm going to have Mike Renner on of CBS to talk some draft stuff and kind of look forward towards, the offseason a little bit. But, I want to talk about some positive news, and we'll get to some of the negative stuff, in terms of, the Nick Mangold of it all, which is awful. I want to save that for the end. Really fun day yesterday after 1 o'clock. Obviously, again, I'll get to some of the Mangold stuff, and I want to be able to hit on that properly. The Jets won a football game. They won a football game in an exciting fashion. They won a football game where they scored they had 500 plus yards. They scored almost 40 points. They won on the road. They beat a team that was a game and a half out of it, out of the division. And again, not a perfect Bengals team by any means, but no slouch. They weren't beating another, 0-7 team. I thought yesterday kind of a lot of things stood out. Obviously, I think that kind of offensive output. I thought the defense, had moments where it looked good, but generally was pretty unimpressive yesterday. Justin Fields had a really nice bounce back, and by all accounts, especially for the expectation level he's at this point in time in his career, just a lot unfolded yesterday. Let's just kind of walk through it a little bit, and I want to highlight Glenn, specifically, and Breece Hall and guys like that. Game kind of started out, unfortunately, as you would have expected. Jets looked a little flat. Defense put up kind of no resistance early on. It felt like Jamien Sherwood was benched the first quarter, which let me tell you, when he came back in, he might as well have stayed benched. It was pretty horrendous yesterday, unfortunately, and we'll get to that a little bit. Big play early in the game. The Jets hold the Bengals to 3. I thought it was a really impressive Quincy Williams drive to start. It kind of looked like the old Quincy Williams. I don't know if that'll be his last game, and we'll talk about it more in the midweek, but there's a chance that might have been Quincy's last performance with the Jets, but looked pretty decent alongside Kiko before he hit the concussion. And Jets finally, they go for it on 4th down early in the game in their own territory. And I think everyone was probably happy to see the Jets going for it early on and felt like, hey, it's worthwhile. Dart throws, 4th and 1. Justin Fields checks out of a QB sneak, which, people were defending it. I don't think it's you can have a defense for it. I think it was as stupid as it gets. It doesn't matter if the Bengals kind of pinch their tackles, into the B gap and the A gap there. Like, Justin Fields is a massive quarterback. You expect him to get there. You trust your offensive line. You run your biggest and best player, and you get 1 yard there. You pick it up. I don't know why Fields checked out of it. Checks out of it to a horrendous play call, which involved Arian Smith having to block a linebacker. It went as expected. It was memed. The Jets go down 10-0. You're like, fuck, man, this is going to be a long afternoon. Then the Jets later on, punt on 4th and 6 early in the game. And it was kind of like meandering along. I believe it was 17-3 at that point. And, settling for 3 when you probably feel like you could have gone for 7. It was just like it was just not a pretty start to the game. And the Jets kind of get rolling near the end of the half. And I thought this might be a season-defining drive for the Jets. They've been horrendous at the end of halves. They've been, memed to the high heavens at the end of halves. And they're able to maintain this really nice drive down all the way into the red zone, inside the 10-yard line. Did they settle for 3? Yeah, they did. But I felt like getting points. They obviously had scored previous with the Tyler Johnson touchdown. I thought it was one of Fields' best throws as a Jet. Looked a lot like week 1 Justin Fields, where he just trusted his guy in man coverage, on an over route that was in a corner route, but kind of similar to the Garrett play early on. Was able to kind of execute there. And again, it was nice to see that. But I thought the biggest thing was, getting points there before the end of the half. The Jets were down 24-10. Disappointing not to get 7, but to really get points there and know you can kind of double up and get points again to start the next half, to me was something they just haven't done a great job of, all year. And it was like, wow, this is a building block point. Fields is starting to play a little bit better. He's struggling down inside the goal line in the red zone, and kind of to be expected with a guy who processes quite slowly. But, generally speaking, like, hey, the defense is struggling today, but the offense is putting together drives, and you felt decent about where they were at. You didn't really necessarily expect them to win the football game, but you expected a close, kind of contest. I think where things kind of flipped for me, as I mentioned, you get the points at the end of the half and then come back out and get points again. And, again, it's only 6 points. You would have loved to get 2 touchdowns there, but the offense started to hum a little bit. And defense was struggling, and again, they lose to 31-16, and you're like, oof, they're just not going to get enough stops today, and they're not going to be able to score enough. And The offense really got rolling. The run game started to look really good. A switch went off for Breece Hall. He looked much more like 22 and even points at 23 Breece Hall, where explosive. He gets himself in the end zone. Justin Fields are starting to feel a little bit. They're getting guys involved. The offense starts to cook, and Tanner Henriksen I thought was fantastic yesterday. Again, third and fourth down stuff. It's definitely a work in progress, especially third and short right now is not great. But like overall, especially the passing concepts, to get really big production out of Isaiah Williams, out of Arian Smith at points yesterday, out of Alan Lazard, drawing multiple legal contacts. I mean, shout out to Alan Lazard, shirtless Alan Lazard, or empty shirt Alan Lazard, getting Mason Taylor involved. The backs, Isaiah Davis and Breece Hall. Davis another 100 plus total yards. Breece 133. On the ground, 7.4 yards a carry, which based on what yesterday was fantastic. And it's just hard not to get excited about kind of the way they won this football game. And Glenn passing the down 14, going for 2 on the road, then again down 8, going for 2, and won them the football game. A bunch of other things had to transpire, and a bunch of other things had to happen, but like he helped win them the football game because of how aggressive he was on third and fourth down, going for it, and then 2-point conversions, trusting the analytics. I'm sure Rich is going to get into this and breaking the box midweek, but like, adding a full 1 or 2% on a win percentage based on going for 2 is huge. The Jets need every advantage they're going to be able to have. And, for Glenn to kind of trust the analytics, trust the in-game analytics, coming from the booth, I thought was fantastic. And again, it's not perfect right now. And there are things that need to get better and they need to tackle better. I didn't think there was a good tackling day. And, again, not every play call is fantastic and not every time they go for it, but generally just the idea of being aggressive. And it felt like the shackles kind of came off for this Jets team, at the end of the first half again, where like they started being aggressive. They, started going for it. And it felt like in the right times. And, again, the going for 2 to me, the penalties have been decreased the last 3 weeks and they're averaging 3.5 penalties per game, where early on in the season, it felt like every game was 12, 13 penalties, very much like the Saleh regime. So, those type of things to me are massive. And again, it's one win. You don't want to overreact. The Jets, could course correct and be very bad in 2 weeks. But going into a bye week where your offense puts up, again, 500 plus yards, your offense scores 30 plus 39 points, your defense actually is able to close out a game and get a stop when they needed to, against, and hold Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to 1 touchdown. And again, 130, 140 yards. Again, I know it's going to sound crazy, but like, outside of the T touchdown, it wasn't impactful yards from Jamar Chase. 18, 19 targets, 90 yards, and no touchdowns. Like, didn't really feel like a lot of explosives. That's a really good job by Stevens and Zaire Thomas, right? And the rest of the defense. Jarvis Brownlee, I thought, had a really nice day. Struggled a little bit early on, but then, the impact play at the end of the game, tackled really well in the screen game, especially with Chase. You got to wrap him up and tackle him right away. And the run defense sucked yesterday. No doubt about it. I didn't think the pass rush was very good. But like they were able to win a football game, and they were able to win the game they couldn't win week 1, where they couldn't get the last one final stop they needed. And to me, like that's a huge course correct of doing things the right way and learning how to win and learning how to not lose in this league. So again, a lot of positives yesterday. Again, not all perfect, right? Like I thought Sherwood was horrendous yesterday. I thought Quinnen Williams was not very good, especially by Quinnen standards. I didn't think Jermaine and Will McDonald were as good as they normally are. But at the same token, they're able to score on offense so much that it didn't matter. They were so good on specials, it did not matter. And their coach pushed all the right buttons. Glenn is now 3 for 3 in challenges over the last 2 weeks. Feels like he's going for it more consistently on fourth downs. It feels like they passed the down 8 test, which was fantastic, and it helped them win the football game. So to me, like a lot of things you can take away from yesterday are nothing but positive and just trying to enjoy a win, right? And like the young players being able to play a huge part in that, whether it be, the Mason Taylors of the world, whether it be Armand Membu, Olu Fashanu, Joe Tidman, who allowed 3 total pressures, 0 quarterback hits. Obviously Simpson and Myers as well, who both had a nice afternoon, but like those guys were rock damn solid yesterday. Jeremy Ruckert had a really nice day blocking, and alongside him, Andrew Beck and Mason Taylor were clearing out holes. Breece Hall again, really goddamn good yesterday. And the touchdown pass at the end, not only was it an exciting play and it reminded you of Curtis to Winkerbet, back in 2000, but really smart play by Breece to be able to wait until he saw him. The play design from Tanner Engstrand, who took it from the Lions last year when he was there, they drew that up. David Montgomery threw Sam Laporta a touchdown and very same exact play call, same part of the field, the whole thing. The Y leak play call, from Tanner Engstrand to kind of emulate what they did against the Jets a few years ago, and they got CJ Mosley in a bind on that 4th and 1 that kind of ended the Jets season, for lack of a better term, in 2022. To be able to run both those plays when they needed to trust his guys like a Breece Hall, like Isaiah Davis, like Mason Taylor, all young players, like that was really impressive to see. And again, putting those guys in big moments on the road, play calls that he knows are going to work. I just came away really impressed. Came away really impressed with Engstrand. Came away really impressed with some of these young football players that are kind of going through the motions and learning, man. And like it's not easy, and they haven't been good enough this year. And this doesn't make them a Super Bowl team or anything like that. But for one Sunday to see the kind of all come together, especially on the offensive side of the football, and you're happy for Justin Fields just to kind of, it was a rough week, and for him to come out and put together the performance he did is obviously great to see. Again, I think this is not the best day from the Jets defense. They made the stops where they needed to, but pass rush is not good enough right now. Some of the blitzes, guys like Andre Sisco blitzing just is not working. So they're going to have to kind of get back in the lab a little bit and figure this out when Cleveland comes to town in 13 days. But I can't tell you how happy I am to sit here not talking about 0-17. Should Glenn be fired? Will Justin Fields ever play in the NFL again? Who are we trading? And again, a lot of guys might get traded between now and even Wednesday, Thursday. Who knows how many games Justin Fields will play the rest of the year. But to have a couple going in the bye and not have to deal with a lot of that negativity surrounding the Jets right now is just a nice thing to have, to be honest with you. And, I feel like everyone needed it yesterday. And again, I'll hit on the Mangold stuff here in a second, but a lot of eerie things happened yesterday, and, a lot of, kind of larger than life situations. But, man, it felt good to get a win yesterday. Again, how the Jets are going to build on this, we'll see. I think for me, and kind of wrapping this up here, and again, I'm going to do a much bigger deep dive. Joe and Connor have their pod out. I know Flip Plan will be out, Jet Heads will be out tonight, but like, there's 4 things to me, or really 5 things I want to see from the Jets the remainder of the year. How they come out of the bye, number 1, is huge. It's going to say a lot about Glenn. It's going to say a lot about this regime. It's going to say a lot about what direction this season goes for the next 9 weeks. Jets teams of the past have been horrendous after the bye. Robert Saleh teams, you could almost pencil a loss in before the season, just right after the schedule came out. It's not a very good Cleveland team. Again, good defense. They're not. I don't know how. We'll see how the matchup's going to be for them. But you have to come out hair on fire, positive momentum right now, at least for 10, 15 days. Keep that momentum going, and how they come out of the bye is going to be huge. It's going to tell me a lot about what Glenn's going to look like as a head coach going forward. Number 2, the 4th downs, the 2-point conversions, and the penalties continuing to trend in the right direction, right? Going forward on more 4th downs when you're supposed to, going forward on 2-point conversions the way they have been, and executing well in there, and then continuing to limit the penalties. Again, you're not going to be perfect. There's going to be penalties in every game. Being able to get to a point where 3, 4, 5 penalties a game that are much more, kind of generic, hey, this illegal contact happened in a game, or, X, Y, and Z, as opposed to illegal formations and late hits and just stupid penalties. When those continue to decrease, that'll be a good thing, right? So 1, how they come out of the bye. 2, penalties, 4th downs, and 2 points, 2-point conversions. Number 3, how the staff continues to develop, primarily Tanner Engstrand. The staff will likely be back in 2025 or 2026 and likely drafting a quarterback. It feels like the Jets have the right offensive coordinator to help kind of integrate a young quarterback and a young player, especially in the passing game and running game in terms of a scheme and concept perspective. It feels like with more talent and a at least average level passer, this scheme could look pretty good and this offense could look pretty damn good. Engstrand continuing to get a better feel for the game consistently and improving 3rd and 4th downs would go a long way. Number 4, I think that you got to want to see them steal 2 divisional games, whether that's Miami, whether that's New England, whether that's Week 18 against Buffalo. I'd love to see them beat Miami and try to beat the Patriots 1 of the 2 times. That would show me a lot of like, hey, we're punching the division as well. The Buffalo game was a disaster. Miami, the first 2 times out against the division, not what we wanted. We're building on that, and we're getting better. Again, 2 division wins, how they come out of the bye, how the young staff, specifically Engstrand, develops. Again, the 4th downs, 2 points, and and penalties. And then lastly, how they continue to develop these young guys, right? Like the Membus of the world, Mason Taylor, Zaire Thomas continue to integrate a little bit. How can Malachi Moore continue to kind of flatten out his performances from being a little bit peaks and valleys at the moment? Can they get a little bit more out of Kiko? What do, guys like Jarvis Brownlee, and players like that continue to look like? And continue to develop some of those guys in year 2 and 3, like, Fashanu, Tippmann, et cetera. If the Jets can do those 5 things, it'll end up being a pretty successful season, all things considered, the way it started. And you feel a lot better about Glenn going forward. So last thing here, unfortunately, obviously the Jets and Jets family abroad lost Nick Mangold yesterday, age of 41, 4 kids. It's hard to talk about. It gets you kind of choked up a little bit, even thinking about, those 4 kids growing up without a parent and, growing up without their dad now is it's pretty horrendous. Obviously I lost my mom a couple years ago and I'm one of 4 and, I'm in my early 30s and, I struggle every day with not having my mom. So I can only imagine what those kids are going to be going through, much younger than me. And I, obviously feel for his wife and family and, got kind of the sentiment out of the locker room yesterday. And a lot of people around the league was like, I thought he had more time. The players found out right before they went out to the locker room, went out for warm-ups and, it just, 11 years with the Jets, was a fantastic player, was a really good captain here and player and, embodied a lot of the mentality and success that, had a lot of success here as a Jet and a guy who's going to be a Hall of Fame finalist. He's a Ring of Honor guy. And crazy enough, his, Ring of Honor induction was against the Bengals a few years ago from Ohio. Mason Taylor, whose dad played with Jason Taylor, played with Nick Mangold, catching the game-winning touchdown. Nick Folk, who played with, Nick Mangold, kicking the game-winning extra point. Breece Hall having 7.4 yards to carry. The Jets having their biggest, fourth quarter comeback and win percentage like that, since the Monday Night Miracle. Like so many different crazy things happened yesterday. And just hearing guys like Rex Ryan, Damian Woody, Willie Colon, Bart Scott talk about their memories of Nick Mangold and what kind of person he was. I got to meet Nick a few times. Got to chug a beer with him in a Rangers game, which was an unbelievable experience and didn't big time me. I've told that story before and, just could not have been a nicer dude. And, again, unbelievable Jet, embodied everything good about the organization. And, it's horrifying, that he's unfortunately passed away. And the Jets needed that yesterday. The Jets fan base, the Jets organization, really rough week, kind of culminating in the loss of Nick Mangold. And then getting that win yesterday, I think, not only getting AG his first win in this organization, off the schneid a little bit, it was a much needed win. And, yeah, man, it sucked. Talking to a lot of my best friends who all played offensive line with, in college and, those guys, their favorite player was Nick Mangold. Obviously I was a Keyshawn guy and Revis, like they love Nick Mangold, man. And, gone too soon. So, if there's anything, anyone the Jets community can do to help, I'm curious how the Jets are going to kind of handle things, next week against Cleveland and stuff like that. And, but yeah, I think we all have great memories of Nick and it's really unfortunate. And again, it's great to see the Jets get a win yesterday and, on the backs of their young players, their young head coach, their young offensive coordinator, and kind of get a miraculous win that, how they can build on it. We'll see. And we'll talk more about that in the midweek, but appreciate everybody for listening. Again, quick 20 here and, we'll talk to you guys soon.